Rooted Revelation. Rooted Revelation.
Hey everybody, welcome to the podcast. It is July 18th, 2024. Wow, well, I'm just continually plagued with technical difficulties. Once again, I was trying to go on early. I was trying to go on at 9 or closer to 9. I have some other things to do, but we're going to get into the news. So there have been a bunch of developments regarding the second shooter theory that I brought up initially when this whole thing happened. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And also Joe Biden has COVID, which means he's getting ready to drop out of the race. So that's a huge development as well. I'm going to go over all those headlines right now. So first up, from the New York Post, we got Trump's would-be assassin Thomas Crooks wrote chilling post foreshadowing rally shooting. And the New York Post article goes on to say that he wrote, July 13th will be my premiere. Watch as it unfolds. The 20-year-old gunman allegedly wrote on Steam, a popular online platform where gamers communicate. Fox News reported the foreshadowing was revealed to U.S. senators during a briefing by top law enforcement officials. So that's FBI. So nobody actually saw the post in the news. And this is what I'm going to talk about, a bunch of theories today that are reported. Now, the thing with journalism is you need to source things, attribute things to a reliable source. And of course, you need to corroborate those things. So aside from what we're reporting by Joe Biden, says he has COVID. We don't know officially if he has COVID, but that's what's being reported by the White House. And I'm going to talk about a lot of different theories concerning the gunman and the assassination attempt, which is full of whoopsies and all sorts of anomalies, just like all this violence that seems to crop up out of nowhere with no motive. But apparently the FBI says now they located a post by the gunman. We don't know if it was under a pseudonym, if he used his real name, but it was on the popular online platform where gamers communicate, Steam. Now, this kid was a gamer. He was pretty much a shut-in. He had no friends. This is a perfect target for the FBI and other people to manipulate because people that are alone, confused, maybe they have a little bit of mental illness, but if they're antisocial already, it's very easy to get them to act out if they think they're being approved. The second thing I want to go into now is that, before I get into some of the other headlines, is that the shooter had a phone with him, and he was communicating with somebody on the phone. It was reported several times by witnesses that he was communicating on his phone. Now, the FBI cracked the phone and they found that he was using encryption, which means they can't find the communication. So this means it's a conspiracy. Now, they're not going to say that, but why would you bring a phone with you where you could be tracked or otherwise located if you're going to commit a heinous act as a lone shooter? Why would you have the phone with you? Apparently he had another device. And this is a red herring because, we had a rudimentary bomb and maybe he was going to set off the bomb. It was the same thing in the Las Vegas shooting. They were trying to shoot petroleum tanks to get them to explode. It's always this red herring that this is an agent of chaos. He's going to blow up things and shoot people and do all these things. That's not what we have to. He had his phone with him, and that's the most important thing. Why? He was communicating with somebody. Why? That makes it a conspiracy. Period. So we don't know who he was communicating with. If it was apparently he had no friends and no social media history. So who was he communicating with? here lies the rub. Now, we're also going to get into the second shooter theory, which, as I said, no one's looking at the southern part of the property, which there's several places where a sniper could be well within range of any professional sniper. I mean, snipers could easily shoot 500 yards, 1,000 yards or more, really. But the southern part of the property where there were many buildings had an easy escape route. Nobody's looking there. Were there even police or Secret Service in that part of the property? And some of those buildings had a clear shot to Trump. There was also evidence online, visual evidence that apparently showed loose rounds striking the railings and striking other things on the southern part around the bleachers, railings, and things like that. And we know also that some of the wounded were in the southern flanked bleachers, and the man that was killed was in the northern flank bleachers. The most important thing we have to understand, though, is how many rounds were shot, by whom, because now they're identifying it was the second counter sniper team that took the shot that took out Crooks, purportedly. There's a lot of talk about the water tower, as I explained to other people I'm communicating with regarding this, is that many people were looking at the water tower and you would see movement up there. The likelihood, first of all, that's too high a vantage point. If you're shooting a mile or more, maybe, but for that, if you're shooting straight down, that is not a vantage point for a sniper. You want a horizontal trajectory of your bullet. You don't want it to be going vertical because, well, there are a number of different factors with ballistics. In any case, so people are talking about the water tower. Nobody's talking about the southern portion of the property where there are plenty of buildings for people to be. Nobody's looking there. We don't know if there were patrols there. We're only concentrating on the glass factory. So let's go on to some of the other headlines. We have from One America News, Trump shooter's parents call police the day of the failed assassination. And I'm going to go over these headlines very quickly. I got a couple other things to do this morning beside the point, but I'm also going to take this opportunity to ask you to engage the channel, like, subscribe, give me a thumbs up, leave a comment. Even if it's a negative comment comment if you have a problem with my hypotheses or theories or whatever, that's fine. I'm not going to get into a debate in the comment section, but I will address some of your concerns if you have any about what my theories are. So the father said that he was told that his son was going shooting at the range a day after he already went. I don't know if that was just miscommunicated or what. Then he said they called the police the day of the failed assassination and said, my son is missing and he took one of my rifles. So they might have known more that they're leading on to. Now, the New York Times is reporting a blind spot in a lost trail, how the gunman got so close to Trump. So the New York Times is making excuses. Even though local police were on the lookout for a suspicious man, critical minutes ticked by, allowing a would-be assassin to slip past, time analysis found. So the Times is going on with the narrative, buttressing the narrative, I should say. Among the thousands of people streaming in to cheer former President Donald Trump at a campaign rally on Saturday, local officers spotted one skinny young man acting oddly and notified other law enforcement. Secret Service, too, was informed through radio communications the suspicious man did not appear to have a weapon. Remarkably, law enforcement had found the right man, Thomas Matthew Cooks, a would-be assassin, though officers did not know at the time. They lost track of him. 20 minutes before the violence erupted, a sniper from a distance spotted Mr. Crooks again and took his picture. I'm not going to go on with this article. They're just buttressing the narrative that the government is weaving. So my problem with all this is we have a lot of video footage that's coming out now. It's sort of like the Las Vegas shooting where bystander and eyewitness video, people are picking through their video of the event and they're seeing if they could see this guy, and they did. Now, there's some discrepancy of where he was on the roof, why he was so far to the west when that was giving him more of an obscured shot. Is that where he climbed up? But he climbed up in the middle of the roof. Why could eyewitnesses to the eastern side of the roof, why could they see him? So there's some discrepancy. Then you have the FBI washing away the evidence or the blood or what have you on the eastern side of the roof. Apparently, we have some video evidence of the rifle. It's true that it did not appear to have a sight, an optic on it, or a scope. And then there's this whole thing about the ladder. Did he carry the ladder from Home Depot? You know, the fiberglass ladder apparently was the SWAT ladder. He had another ladder. Whatever. All this is immaterial. Because if we're looking at a second shooter scenario, which I'm willing to give up if the evidence doesn't provide, but my problem is the southern part of the property has plenty of sniper roosts to be in, and nobody's even looking down there, which leads me to say to look down there because we don't know how many shots were fired by whom. So they do admit there was a second counter sniper team on another roof behind Trump, which is strange, but pointing in the same direction. Why weren't they pointed south, which they should have been? But apparently it was them who took the shot. So they would, if they were pointed south, they would have had to turn around and take the shot because the well-seen counter sniper team was looking right at that roof. Why wouldn't, and they had two snipers there, why wouldn't they take the shot? So all this is muddying the waters further. It doesn't really make any sense. None of it does, because the closer the counter sniper, they should have taken the shot, and they were watching in that direction anyway. Why would you have two counter sniper teams looking in the same direction? Not making any sense. So we're just going to go with headlines here from the Washington Post. Secret Service was told police could not watch building used by Trump rally shooter. Comments here obviously are, we have some reports that the local police that were supposed to be manning that rooftop, the guy called in sick or didn't show up or something to that effect. Also, we had a police and Secret Service staging area in that property, apparently not in that building, but in another building in the glass manufacturer. Why? They were on the property and they weren't aware of this kid walking around aimlessly. And if you look at the footage of him walking around aimlessly, he was way over by that building acting oddly. And apparently they saw him taking distance readings. All these are red flags. And the fact is, if you have a staging area for police, you don't have police stationed outside that building. None of this seems to make sense. And what were they doing in the building exactly? Just listening to communications? There was no drone in the air. Was there somebody on the water tower? There should have been. All these things seem like a red herring, because that's where all the concentration. Always look where the person is pointing. Always look in the opposite direction. It's called sleight of hand. The magicians use it all the time. More headlines. New York Post, Secret Service was warned about ID'd Thomas Cook as a threat 10 minutes before Trump took stage, but let ex-president go on anyway. More about the timeline. Of course, the New York Times didn't cover this, and they didn't ask the question why the Secret Service, even though that there was a possible threat, they didn't delay Trump's entrance onto the stage. It seems like a setup. I'm going to go back to several images I showed yesterday. You see how the stage is set up with the end of Trump's stage, which is slightly higher than, it's about as high as the fourth or fifth bleacher. It's not as low as the lowest bleacher. You have to understand it has to be high enough to keep people away from grabbing at you. I mean, there's a perimeter fence around the stage. But why the shooter wouldn't have a clear shot if he moved to the western side of the roof and not the eastern side where he'd have a obscured roof. Now we need to understand trajectory. Apparently somebody in the left flank bleacher was shot up here, but this is what I don't understand. He was at like the second or third from the top. Now, if you're shooting from on top of a building at something that's lower, then the trajectory would have hit people in the lower bleachers, not on top of the bleachers. So that's very strange to begin with. Also, some of these railings over here were shot. I'm going to go to the next slide. So this is the trajectory of the gunmen, supposedly. Now, they have them put in the middle of the roof. The FBI was, and some other photographs showed him on this side of the roof, which would clearly have an obscured shot because of the bleacher. You would just be like maybe shooting at the top of his head. So, and this is because people here at the bottom bleacher were also hit, but at the top bleacher, as I said, if you're shooting from high to low, the trajectory of the bullet would go down into the lower bleachers here, not up here. So he was either a very bad shot or someone else was shooting. Now, this is the other Secret Service counter sniper team. One here on this other barn, pointing this way as well. Why? Why were they pointing this way? And they had an obscurity here with a crane. But he's the one that took him out. Did this guy turn around? Why wouldn't he be pointing south? Because here I'm going to look at this diagram here from satellite imagery of the property itself. As I said, you have everybody looking at this building in the north, the AGR International Company, but nobody's looking down here. Look, there's a whole variety of buildings where there could have been a sniper shooting at Trump. I put an additional shooter here, but there could have been additional shooters here. Maybe the water tower. I doubt the water tower, but maybe additional shooters on these back buildings at AGR. Could be a possibility. We have to look at the ballistics and the trajectory. But this is the one with easy escape, because this place would be swarming with police after the event. The southern part of the property has this dirt parking lot, very much like the grassy knoll, mind you. And a shooter could easily escape through this dirt parking lot and drive out through a residential neighborhood. Far from any scrutiny is what you want. My theory about wounding the president on purpose might have been a little premature. They might have been trying to kill him because now we have uncorroborated reports that there was 120,000 put options on Truth Social the Friday before the assassination attempt. So somebody knew. So also you put that together with the fact that the would-be assassin, the patsy, was communicating encrypted communication with someone at the time of the shooting. He had his phone out with him. I don't think he was scrolling the news or whatever he was doing. So there's all that. So I still believe, and a lot of people are talking about a second shooter, but I wish, and I would employ people who believe in this theory, is to look at the southern part of the property and not look at the water tower or look at AGR anymore. We need to look south because there's easy exfil out of there And I'm still going with that. There's some evidence that rounds hit railings and stuff. Then we have the put options, purportedly. No scope by the shooter. It all seems, and like I said, this building's on the southern part of the property. It could be this very most southern building, either of these ones, that have higher roofs. And we're still within range of a professional sniper. I'm going to just put the slide back on here. Just showing these southern roofs here, these southern buildings. This one, anybody could go on Google Earth and maybe take a street view of these buildings and see how high they are. But if they're going to mimic trajectory, these barns here will probably suffice. Plus, you have trees here that would screen you from the counter snipers if you're back in here. I don't know what kind of obstructions. I know there were jumbotrons. But the front of the stage was around here somewhere. So. All right. Moving on to headlines. OAN Comer to subpoena U.S. Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheadle. This is great news. She won't be even to offer anything substantial. She won't. She doesn't have any information. She could be questioned, certainly. We really needed to question the counter sniper teams. We need to know how many rounds were fired and where those rounds by time of the time that the shot was fired and where it went. First round, second round, third round, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth. How many rounds were fired that day? 11, 12? We need to know when they were fired and where those rounds ultimately went. At least in theory, because a lot of times they can't find the hole or the slug. And also we need to know, apparently we know what the box of rounds that he had 62 grain, but we don't know, apparently, we don't really know. Winchester, 62 grain, probably hollow point, I'm not sure. All right, other story today to be concerned about. President Joe Biden tests positive for COVID-19, a pivotal moment in re-election campaign. BBC reports Biden under new pressure from top Democrats as COVID halts campaign. Does he really have COVID? We don't know. New York Post is reporting Senator Chuck Schumer forcefully shared Democrat concerns with Biden about remaining on the 2024 ticket. I just want to say here that Chuck Schumer came out and said, I did not ask President Biden to step aside, and that's why the New York Post story is a little more accurate, forcefully shared Democratic concerns. So it didn't ask him to step down, nor apparently did Nancy Pelosi, but they forcefully shared concerns. Then Nancy Pelosi, also from the New York Post, Nancy Pelosi privately told Biden he can't beat Trump in 2024 presidential race, would ruin Dems' chances in the House if he stays in. Now, this is all coming from not just private conversations. They say privately, but there was a Senate phone call. I'm going to get into that where he was acting strangely. So let's go back to the headlines. New York Post also, Biden now being receptive about possibility of giving up the 2024 re-election campaign. So now there's a change of tune, and that's why we don't believe he really has COVID. Because he originally said, if there's some sort of illness or something, that I might step aside. I would think that there's some possibilities happening here. Originally, when he was diagnosed, before we had the whole picture, I thought he could die. He could have been administered COVID, so he could be put on a ventilator and die, so he could get really sick and die or become really sick and infirmed. But now it looks like it just might be an excuse to get off the campaign trail because he's making too many mistakes. So probably to get him off the campaign trail for him and his family to do some serious thinking. Now, this from the New York Post as well. President Biden trails nearly every other Dem, including Kamala Harris, in disastrous poll. So that's a new poll showing that Biden, particularly after the assassination, Trump really didn't get a bump, but Biden went down. And the Secret Service thing is starting to complicate things because his administration is in charge of Secret Service. So any lapses in security could be traced right back to the Biden administration. Also, he's got a bunch of other things that you put that together with the Department of Justice, Merrick Garland pursuing these trumped up charges, for lack of a better word, makes the Biden administration look complicit in this Trump takedown effort. And some people, maybe not openly expressing, but maybe privately or just to themselves, feel that if Biden was willing to use the DOJ to take out Trump, maybe he'd do something else. Maybe he wouldn't get the shooter there, but just remove some of the security, whatever, that gave an opening for this shooter to exploit, which realistically, there's no way this would be allowed to happen. It's the same thing with Uvalde. Oh, they were all there. All the cops were there waiting while purportedly the school shooter was shooting children, and they were just sitting there waiting there, putting sanitizer on their hands. All right, more headlines. Mediaite, Biden appears to forget name of black man, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin in BET interview. If you didn't see this interview, he doesn't know who Lloyd Austin is. This is like the third or fourth time he wasn't able to recall Lloyd Austin's name. Lloyd Austin was nominated or put forth for confirmation as Defense Secretary by the people that control Biden. Biden doesn't even know who Lloyd Austin is. And again, it's another DEI hire. Going back to the headlines, Daily Beast, rambling Biden gets nasty with Bronze Star Democrat on Zoom call. So apparently this congressperson, or I believe it was a senator, it was the Senate call where Biden was trailing off and just saying whatever. He couldn't put two sentences together. And the people on the call said it was worse than the debate. And then he would ramble on, and he got nasty with this ex-special forces Democrat politician. And he said that your bronze, what did you do with your Bronze Star that my son didn't do? Something like that. Again, evoking his dead son, who had the Bronze Star for who knows what. Beau Biden got the Bronze Star for because his dad was politically connected, obviously. All right, so other news. If you weren't watching the RNC, J.D. Vance accepts GOP VP nomination, setting him up as MAGA heir, which is what we were all saying. The Ohio senator's speech contrasted his life story with what he described as Biden's decade of policy failures. And it was an okay speech. He fumbled quite a bit. He's a young guy, and he paused a lot to let the crowd cheer, which was fine, but the speech didn't really have a good continuity. But he's a young guy. I'm going to give him a break. But everybody was excited because he's young, and if he can propel the MAGA movement, the greatest political movement in American history, mind you, that would be great. And that's why everybody was excited about him. And, even though he has limited political experience, that's fine too. But he compared his life experience growing up in Appalachia, and a poor kid, and living the American dream. He went into the service, became a Marine. Then he wrote a book, and then he went into Yale Law School and became a lawyer, and he met his wife, and now he's got children. And it was a great story, and his whole family came on stage after, and it was good, even though the speech was kind of halting. But we were all excited about J.D. Vance because MAGA heir is correct. Trump wanted somebody who could carry the movement forward forcefully, and he has enough energy and gumption to do so. So let's hope that that's the case. All right, kids. Thanks for joining me today on this Thursday, July 18th. like I said, I've been having all sorts of technical difficulties. Everything's falling apart, so I might have to go get a new microphone. And I have a couple decks here. One deck is out. It's not. It's I don't know if it's the wire or what, but there's tons of interference going on, and I couldn't use that deck, so I have to use this other deck, and so, which is fine. But thanks for joining me today, and check me out tomorrow. And please check out episode 83 of Tuesdays with Perry, where we discussed, of course, the Trump assassination attempt. I'm so glad that people that never entertain conspiracy now are entertaining conspiracy, especially the second shooter theory, which may or may not be the case. But what we have to understand is it is a conspiracy, that it's not just one lone guy who decided that we don't know what the motive is, that just decided to get in his car and go to Home Depot and go try to shoot Donald Trump. It just doesn't make any sense if he wasn't goaded to do so. And only the FBI uncovered one thing, a chilling, this is my premiere on Steam. Does he have friends on Steam? Who was he communicating with on Steam? Was it an ex-FBI agent? And who cares? Who cares what he said on Steam? And we don't even know if that's true. Do we have any corroboration that that was even him? We don't know. All we can know is piece together the day of the events. Zapruder style. Let's look at the footage. Let's see exactly what happened. We need to know how many rounds were fired from whom. And then we're going to count them up, and we're going to see where those rounds went. So if you were there at the rally, come over your footage and look for anything suspicious, anything that might get us more ballistic information. And thanks for joining me today again. I will see you all tomorrow. Stay hip to the trick, and don't forget you're under attack psychologically, biologically. I'll see you tomorrow. Respect.
This is all a conspiracy. No, you know that it's a conspiracy.